to the cooking show segment of today, a little bit different experience, I hope. My name is Mike Finley. I'm the CTO for a company called AnswerRocket. I'm going to show some slides, and then we're going to do a demo over video, just because you never know how the Wi-Fi is going to be. And then if there's time, we can do some live demo after that. This idea of the cooking show is basically our goal is to show you how to build generative AI assistant for an enterprise up here. So you're going to see AnswerRocket demonstrated, and then we're going to make some changes to it, and then you're going to see the results of that. And the cooking show is a reference to, there's a little bit of sort of magic just because we have 20 minutes to get this done. All right, so with all that said, let's jump in. What are we talking about today? We're talking about the cute little guy in the middle up there. His name is Max, and he is an enterprise assistant, a Copilot, if you will. And Max came out of two 10s, right? Came out of 10 years on the right side of this chart of AnswerRocket building augmented analytics, right? This is the idea that you take enterprise data and you don't just sort of do basic things to it. You look deep into enterprise data of all different sorts. And you provide augmented analytics for it. And then 10 months, that's the second 10, where AnswerRocket integrated generative AI from these LLMs that we all started seeing late last year. And the combination really is Max. And so the thing that AnswerRocket gets, of course, from our 10 years of work before generative AI was that depth of analysis, really understanding business critical problems, providing enterprise caliber systems, being able to interact with all the different use cases that a large and growing business has. And the things that we're getting from the language models, from the generative AI, of course, is the ability to speak, to engage and drive adoption in plain language, the ability to plan how to do a multi-step analysis, which is not something a lot of people are familiar with coming from an AI, so you'll see some of that today. And then finally, this idea of truly engaging with the data, being able to feed the data to a generative AI and have it react and interact with you. So with all that said, I'll keep going through a couple more slides here. The result of putting all that together is, it's Max, right? So what does he do? Well, he's like a co-pilot. He's like a chat bot. He's on your desktop, and he's interacting with the data the same way that an analyst would sitting next to you, right? So he's not sort of saying, which grid cell in the spreadsheet do you want to use, or which table from the SQL database do you want to use? He's asking questions. You're asking questions. It's back and forth conversationally. He is connected to your data, and he is skilled in advanced analytics for your business. And everything he does is safe and secure. And let me just kind of get out of the way the concerns. We can talk about this separately if you want to. I'm happy to. But everybody's concerned: are you sharing my data? Are you training my competitors with the data that I provide you? Are you letting hallucinated values come through? These are all very legitimate and important concerns, and AnswerRocket addresses those, but I'm not going to touch on them today. We're touching on the actual functionality, but I can talk at length about the measures we take to cover those risk areas. All right, so we're going to go a little bit deeper before we get into the demo on exactly what it is that Max is made of, right? So for me to kind of show you the guts, not just a demo of him, but how do we actually update him, I've got to give you all the parts that are in the ecosystem here. And that's why you're seeing the stuff up here. That skills one up at the top, that's what we're actually going to be cooking today. We're going to be cooking a skill and teaching Max new things on the fly. But let me talk about these other ones. So over on the left side of the picture, you have all of the typical ways that enterprise data is used, right? So could be through chats, could be through reporting, could be through Slacks, emails, all sorts of things. Then there's outputs, PowerPoints and PDFs, all sorts of different capabilities for delivering data. And Max has all those interconnections. And then on the right side of the picture, you've got the things you'd expect, of course, the generative models, the LLMs, in the lower right-hand corner, and then, of course, data. And that's structured data and unstructured, right? So structured data, of course, is just about any kind of database you can imagine. Unstructured is all those dark data elements, right? Things that until this time last year, they weren't really data. They were PDFs. They were meeting transcripts. They were annual reports, right? These are terminal kind of dead ends for that information until language models came around, and now we can use that information. So Max can use any of those data sources. You can use the language model, and it's able to produce results that go anywhere that the enterprise needs. But what is the stuff that Max is doing? I mean, you can't just go to ChatGPT and dump in your enterprise data and ask questions. And the answer to that is the piece at the top, the skills, right? Skills are the things that are basically allowing the language model to have a secure and accurate interaction with your enterprise data. And so today, what I'm going to demonstrate for you is the Skills Studio within AnswerRocket. The Skills Studio is kind of like the Max University, right? That's where we take Max to school to show him things about your business, and that's how he becomes hyper intelligent about the things that you want him to know. So inside these skills, and this is the last slide before we jump over to actually seeing it work, inside these skills, we have to consider all the different things that it has to know about, right? So it has to know certainly easy things like what are the data sets? What am I connecting to? What's in there? It's not just numbers and columns, right? It's sales figures and prices. It's user reviews. It's delivery dates that were missed. It's stockouts. It's all sorts of different information, and it's important to know what that data is. It's also the techniques that are used to analyze it, right? If you're studying, cohorts of data from e-commerce like we're doing today, you have a different kind of technique than if you're trying to do a 5-year strategic plan, right? Or if you're trying to optimize prices for your business, you have a very different set of analysis techniques than if you're just trying to forecast next year, right? So the analysis techniques come in, the visualizations, of course, that you would expect come in to the skills, and then the idea of these insights. What are the things that we're looking for it to learn from, right? Like I wouldn't want to go to, since we're in Atlanta, I'll talk about Chick-fil-A. I wouldn't want to go to Chick-fil-A and say, I've got an insight for you. You should open on Sundays, right? That's not part of their culture, right? It's not useful. I was once in a briefing where an AI system said the #1 driver of COVID was the date. Well, that's not insightful. The fact that as days go by, there's more COVID, that doesn't help anybody, right? So what are the insights that are important in your data, and how does that relate? Okay, so now let me stop with the slides and set up the scenario. Sorry, there is one more slide. This is just kind of setting up the cooking show scenario. So I'm going to pretend to be a marketing manager for a direct-to-consumer pasta manufacturer. What I'm really going to want to do is figure out the performance and where should I spend my marketing dollars, how should I innovate, what are the white spaces in the market that are available to me that I'm not addressing. And the data that I have is syndicated data, so I've gone out and I purchased some data about sales in this market as a whole, and then I have my own sales data. Maybe it's off of whatever my e-com platform is that's telling me, right? So this is all my data sources, and now the question is, what can Max do with all that? All right, so now we switched over and we're actually in Max. So this is where Max starts up, and notice that he says, "Hey, I'm Max," and it tells us right away. He says, "Hey, I'm a Copilot that has access to your syndicated data to give you an AI augmented experience." Notice that it doesn't have that e-commerce data yet. That hasn't been connected. We're going to do that. That's part of the cooking show, and it has 30 months of data going into the past. Okay. So I'm going to start the video, and I'm just going to stop it along the way as it does different things. So I'm a pasta marketing executive, and this is the data that I have. I have things like sizes of pasta, sales, distribution, all the stuff that's typical in this kind of environment. So that's the data that's in there. And now I'm just going to ask a question. I'm going to start with a simple question. Can you get me the sales last year? I think is, for last year. And notice this is me typing and not trying to be too perfect about it, so I've got lazy user, I think. And so what Max is going to do is he's going to think about it for a second, and then this is bouncing off the language model to figure out what it is that question means. And notice it comes back and says, okay, there's the sales were 2.3 billion. I'm going to pause it right there for a second. So I asked the question. It came back and said, yep, in all of pasta, sales were 2.3 billion for last year. And then I clicked in the corner, I clicked on kind of show how you got the answer, and notice that it ran a report called Pasta Snapshot Analysis, and it knew that it was sales and it was last year and all this stuff. So the language model, the question went to the language model said, to get an answer to this, I think I want to use a tool called the pasta snapshot analysis. Now, what are these tools? What are these tools that you speak of? Well, that's what skills are. Skills are tools that the language model can use. It's in the OpenAI parlance, they're called functions. In the LangChain parlance, they're called agents. There's lots of different or tools. There's lots of different terminology, but fundamentally, it's a way for the language model to reach back out of whatever training data it had that all the teenagers are using on ChatGPT. It reaches outside of that container and says, hey, I need some facts that I don't have. I don't have any facts about pasta sales in 2022. Can you give me those, right? So that's that function call. And so AnswerRocket gave it that answer, and I'll allow this to continue playing for a second. Notice it did say last year in sales, easy stuff. It corrected those. And so now I can click this button that says trend that by month. I could type it as well. I could ask it 6 different ways. I could tell it to do it in Spanish. All those would work. And in this case, now it's gonna follow up that prior question because it knows that I'm talking about last year and the pasta sales. Notice now it's picked a little trend report. I highlighted that in blue at the bottom. And I press this, it's gonna, we're just gonna let it finish running through getting this data. This was recorded in real time. There's nothing sort of shortened out of here. Okay, so here is the chart that came back. And notice that after the chart comes back, the language model is still giving us some facts, right? It's still scrolling through some facts. And finally, when those blue numbers come up, you see like some of the numbers in the text are turned blue. That indicates that the language model is done, and Max has verified every one of those facts, right? The contrast may not be great. Yeah, you can see it, I hope. So we've gone and we've verified those numbers. We turned them blue so that they're not hallucinations. They're not something that came from the mind of the language model. They actually came from facts that were fed to the language model. And so it's been able to give us a pretty interesting summary of what's going on, right? It's pointed out some peaks. It's pointed out that there's kind of a consistent increase at different times. It's talking about a forecast, right? It's done a nice job of analyzing all that data. And if we allow it to continue, I notice here that there's May was an interesting month, and then kind of all of Q4. And that's going to be important because as we go through for the rest of this presentation, we're going to dive into May and Q4 to kind of understand what exactly happened in there. So this is where the Copilot comes into play, right? It shows us all the options. We're choosing the options to continue with. So the next thing I'm going to do is say, okay, well, for that May data, because I'm curious about e-commerce, this is what I'm driving, how much of that came from e-commerce? And remember, all we've told Max about so far is that syndicated data that was sort of the market as a whole, the 2.3 billion. And so the model is going to look at that question and say, well, let me try to get it, but sorry, I don't have channel level data, right? It didn't say I don't have e-commerce data. It knows that e-commerce is a channel for a business. Like there could be, direct to consumer through, other means, or there could be wholesale, there could be retail. So it says I don't have information there. So now this is kind of where we go into the cooking show moment. We want to give it access to e-commerce data. So I'm going to switch tabs up there at the top of the screen. I was in the tab all the way on the left. I switched to the next tab, this is the Skill Studio. The Skill Studio is, again, it's where Max goes to learn new stuff, right? And so I'll let it step through what the Skill Studio is. This is where copilots are created, and I'm in the Pasta Marketing Assistant Copilot, which has 3 skills: trending, snapshot, and performance breakout. Now, that doesn't mean it can answer 3 different questions. That means that it knows how to do analysis of those 3 types. It can answer many, many questions. It can use those skills in combination. It can do them in sequences. It can do all sorts of things with those capabilities. But those are the skills that it has now. And so we're going to add one. We're going to hit the Add New Skill button. Then we hit Skill 3. And again, cooking show magic. Pop, there it is. I just added a new skill, right? So notice that what I really did was paste in a JSON block, not something that was extremely arduous to do. It's kind of like, you can think of it as I just went to the App Store and got the skill that I needed and plugged it in here, right? So now I'm going to, now that I've got this new e-commerce skill, notice that what's in there has trends and breakouts for e-commerce, right? So it's got a little bit of slicing and dicing, nothing too deep. So if I go back over and I just ask that question again, notice what I'm doing here. I click the little pencil next to the question that I got the bad answer for, the answer I didn't like. I click the pencil, and now I get to ask the question again. And when I do it this time, Now the generative AI is going to look at all the choices, including that new cohort capability, and it's going to decide, hey, why don't I use that, sorry, not cohort, that new e-com capability, and it's going to go and use that to get the information that I needed. So now it does have the data that I need, right, for the way that my pasta sales, chickpea and egg and whatnot, how those broke out over the course of May of 2022, because I asked it about May. And so that's pretty cool. But what I want is something a little bit deeper than that. I want breakouts and trends, sure, but I also want to see cohorts. I want to know how those May people did later on. I want to know if there was other times when my e-com was doing better. Maybe I need to decide if I'm buying more ads from Facebook, or if I should do the same campaign that I do every January, right? I'm really trying to get in and understand that cohort. So as it stands right now, I'm gonna add or cohort to the description of that we pasted in earlier. Remember we said it can be trends or breakouts, and I just added or cohort to that. Now so far, all I've done is tell the language model, hey, there's going to be a cohort capability. I haven't actually plugged that cohort capability in yet, but I've told it, hey, expect there to be a cohort capability. And so I'll let it continue. Now I'm over in the code of the skill itself, right? I've switched to a third tab, and this is the actual Python code in what we call the analysis dispatch. Now right now, that analysis dispatch, notice it has a breakout and a trend, and I'm adding the cohort to it. So all I do is say, yep, do cohort analysis, and now there's going to be one of those cooking show moments where I'm going to pop out the finished goods, because I'm just going to add that routine that does the cohort analysis. I'm going to just add that right in where I want it to be. So as soon as I paste that in, which is coming up here, this little page of code is all it took. I paste that in. Now I've got the cohort capability. I'm going to go save that, and so now I'm within the Copilot, the Max e-commerce D2C Pasta Copilot, and I've added that new cohort skill. So now when I go back over to Max, and again, this is all just one take recorded in real time, I say, did those customers stay with us for long? All right, remember I was talking about May 2022 and the people that bought pasta from us. And I said, did those customers stay with us for long? Well, notice right away, it picks out the cohort study. I didn't say cohort, I didn't say use e-commerce, I didn't say it was May 2022. All that's in the context of the thread, right? That's in the conversation. Max is right there with me, following along as I'm working through these questions. And so it's using that cohort's capability that we just added, we just told it about it, and it's put it to use. And it's also it's not getting money anymore. Previously it had money, now it's getting customer counts, because that's the thing that I'm asking about customers and that customer behavior. And so here it's come back for me with the cohort study, and notice it's got the expected kind of a cohort chart saying, okay, for the month since last purchase, going across the top, and each of the cohorts going down in rows. It's really identified that July of 22 was better, December of 21 was worse. So it's kind of telling me, relatively speaking, there's my May cohort, May 2022, right there in the middle. They started off pretty strong. They kind of dwindled over the next few months. So it's saying, look, some of these are better, some of these are worse, right? So now I've added this new capability, and of course, there's some cooking show moments there, but it wasn't extensive. Certainly wasn't difficult to merge the analysis that I already had into Max as a Copilot. And that's really an important note for anybody with an enterprise, right? We want to be able to take all of the work that you've done before and be able to engage that into a Copilot, take advantage of it, use it to answer questions. You don't want to change how you forecast overnight. You want to make forecasts easier to get to, right? You don't want to change how you look at competitors overnight. You want to look at every competitor every night, right? That's not something that you could do before. It's this idea of taking it up to scale. So we bring the Copilot in, we give it the skills, the capability of your experts, of your algorithms that you've built. If you don't have them, we help you build them, or we train you on how to build them. The Copilot Studio is part of the product. And ultimately, it just makes creating these intelligent agents a lot more straightforward. So the next question that I ask here is, and I paused it briefly, is what analysis is available? I just kind of said openly, what analysis is available? And now the language model is actually answering. This is not a scripted answer. This is just what it sees, the tools that it has, and it answered with that. And so I see that there's one here called the performance breakout analytics. So now I'm going to just ask it another kind of a deeper question, right? This is more of a deep dive question that I might have. So what base sizes and segments drove the sales in Q4? Remember, May was one time when there was a bump, and I said, hey, is e-commerce, what happened there? Those didn't look like particularly great customers, as we learned. Well, what about Q4? What was driving all that activity in Q4? Tell me where that came from. And so here, Max is reaching out to that performance breakout analysis skill, and it's identified that Q4 is the thing it's targeting. And you can see that it's basically grabbed all the important stuff out of the question that I asked, and the reporting is going on in the background. If this is something that and there it's come back already. In this case, notice the depth of the analysis is done, right? It's basically got, I'll pause it here for a second. So it looked across base sizes. It told me which ones were moving, which ones weren't. It looked across segments, did the same thing. It gave me a table if I want to export to Excel. It gave me some interesting commentary overall about what's happening. And notice it even does the conjoint analysis of the combinations of base sizes and segments, right? So it's really sliced this every different way to be able to give me, again, this depth of analysis. And all those blue numbers that are up there are coming out of SQL statements. We've got that we can back them up with actual facts from your enterprise, so there's no concern about the hallucination and all those kind of factors that are important, but that can be avoided when you build the system correctly. So this last screen, this next screen that I've got is really showing all the available studio, all the skills that are out there in the studio. So we've got all sorts of things from what metrics are driving other metrics, so kind of a causal type analysis. You've got fair share up here, you got innovation. Really, this is where you add more of your own, right? This is the App Store where you put more of those skills on here. Those become the engine that powers the AI. The AI becomes the Copilot that turns everybody in the enterprise into a genius. So the last thing that I'm doing here is just saying, hey, can you summarize this conversation? And I want it in 200 words or less, right? I don't want a ton of information about this. And sure enough, in typical language model fashion, it's able to turn around, go out, and be able to have this kind of interaction. And I think it did keep going with some more questions, but that's probably. I think I was asking something about e-commerce in Spain after that. Just kind of experimenting with the data that I had. So that's the cooking show version of Max. Let me just pause that, and maybe I'll pop over to to basically Max itself. This is why we did this is why we did it as a video, because there's some kind of a problem running it live. But you've seen how it started off knowing certain things about syndicated data, interactively answering questions. All of that was in one conversation thread, interacting in real time. I could take that thread and say, by the way, run that every Wednesday at 4 p.m. or run it on every morning at 7 for all of these product categories, right? I can repeat that analysis. It doesn't have to be interactive. I can have that experience delivered on my phone. I can have the experience delivered, on lots of different enterprise portal type situations, just depending on how you want to approach it. So AnswerRocket has taken this idea of the Copilot, which you're starting to see pop up in a lot of different contexts about how GenAI is used to perform analysis. And it's really made it deep into the function of the data, not just saying, yep, I've got time series data, or I have a series of data that I need to find anomalies in or something like that, but really saying, what is this data set describing? How does this data set represent my business? And what does it tell me about my business when I analyze this data? And that is the end of the talk. Thank you.